Back on the SportsMax Zone, bowling things off with cricket. West Indies and Sri Lanka will lock horns on Wednesday in the first of 3 T20 internationals at the Coolidge Cricket Ground in Antigua. Now, ahead of the game, the West Indies head coach Phil Simmons said the series is an audition for the T20 World Cup to be played later this year.
We need to start seeing how the makeup of our team goes. We need to make sure that people are able to do the job that we want them to do. Whether it be at the top of the batting order, whether it be in the middle, at the end, and same with the bowling. You know, we've got to identify as soon as possible who's going to bowl on new ball, who's going to bowl in the dead. And so it starts from now. So by the time we are playing Australia in some T20s in July, we must know who's our final 15 or 16 to go to World Cup.
Now, the next T20 World Cup is set for India from October to November. Meanwhile, Director of Cricket at CWI, Jimmy Adams, has confirmed that Shimron Hetmyer and Roston Chase have passed the latest fitness tests and will be available for selection for the Test series against the touring Sri Lankans. The pair, along with Sheldon Cottrell and O'Shane Thomas, had failed the minimum fitness standard, thereby missing out on selection for the T20 and the ODIs. Jimmy Adams now joins us live on the SportsMax Zone. Jimmy, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Lance.
Yeah, well, let's start here, because this issue of fitness tests and key players failing fitness tests, for some people, very, very contentious. But you've been clear in saying that they actually failed meeting the minimum standards, which, you know, looking on, makes the players look irresponsible. Your comment?
Well, it's a situation that nobody wants to see happen. Unfortunately, it did, and the framework in which players are made available for selection is very clear and has been for quite some time. There's a minimum standard that has to be met, and the 4 players failed to meet that minimum standard, and they just made themselves unavailable for selection. It's a tough one, because we are actually planning for a world event in October, and 3 of the 4 certainly would have been involved in the T20s coming up starting tomorrow. So it has put a little spoke in our planning as well, but it's gone. So the key is to get all of these players at least to that minimum standard, and then hopefully we can continue to move their fitness standards even past that. But the starting point is to get where Roston and Shimron are now, which is get them available for selection through meeting that minimum standard, and then getting their fitness levels even higher throughout the course of this series.
Yeah, there was no mention of the other 2 players who failed fitness tests originally, Jimmy. Haven't they redone their tests?
They still haven't gotten there, but they're going to remain in Antigua to work with the squad for the next month, for the next 4 weeks, with a view to getting up to that minimum standard before the end of the Sri Lanka series. So they would have been involved in the T20s had they gotten to that standard. So we thought that the best thing for them would be to keep them with the squad, keep them working on their fitness levels, and hopefully get them to that minimum standard as soon as possible.
And of course, because the T20 and the ODI squads, the white ball squads, have already been confirmed, Chase and Hetmyer will now be eligible only for the Test series, because that squad is still to be confirmed.
That is correct.
All right. One of the things we have to look at here, Jimmy, is the issue of, you know, cricket fans trusting the system. And, you know, looking on, a lot of questions have been asked about fitness tests, because to the naked eye, some of the players look reasonably fit players who, you know, have failed fitness tests. And there are others who people feel may not be as fit as some who failed the fitness test, but they somehow have gotten a clearance. Can you confirm to us if the fitness tests are standard, or is it that players have varying levels of fitness based on, you know, them, you know, their own body conditions and so on, that they have to attain?
The fitness policy, which has actually been in place even before I came, is very clear that players can be exempted for a period, okay, in 4 key areas: age, physiological limitations, training history, or injury history. So there are players who have been selected in the past, in the recent past, who fall under one of those 4 categories. But outside of being exempted, okay, for any one of those reasons, then you'd be expected, 1, to get to the minimum standard in order to be selected, and 2, coming back out of a COVID situation, they're going to be, there has been in the past where everybody has individual targets to meet. So it's not just a case of getting the minimum standard. Players are expected to get to their personal targets as we seek to move the entire squad up to a target, a set target that we feel is in keeping with international cricket.
And Jimmy, it is obvious that people would pick on a guy like Rakeem Cornell to say, well, how can Jimbo pass a fitness test when Hetmeyer or Chase can't, looking just at how the individuals present themselves from a physiological perspective. I wanted to speak directly to what would obtain for Rakeem and what would obtain for another player drawn at random from the squad for a fitness test.
Explain the question.
What I'm saying is, people look at Rakeem Cornell and say, big guy, 6 foot plenty, 300 plus pounds. How can he pass a fitness test? And Roston Chase, who looks as if he doesn't have an ounce of fat on his body, can't pass a fitness test. So I'm asking you, from what you know about the process, to explain why you can't measure it just from what you see, one man looking slim and one man looking as if he's carrying bulk.
Again, I repeat that there are 4 areas under which exemptions are granted. Okay, again, one is player age, physiological limitations, injury history, and training history. So if you have a player who has physiological issues or injury issues in the past, or issues with age, because the science is known, this is not guesswork, this is all proven scientifically, then exemptions are granted. So if it is a case where, not if, there are players now who are playing under exemptions, Chris Gayle being one, Andre Russell being one, Rakeem Cornwell being one, for different reasons, but the policy speaks to that, and it is very, very clear on that, and it has been in place for quite a while. Players are aware of it. Maybe the public isn't, but that I'm hoping that sort of answers the question that you're asking.
Well, it does, especially when you spoke to the exemptions and you named the players for which exemptions are built into the tests that they sit, because it's what is being said on the chat forums from cricket fans. Whenever squads are announced and whenever players are omitted for failing fitness standards, they ask these how come questions, and it is necessary for you to have explained what you did about the exemptions.
I would also add there have been times in the past where exemptions have been granted because of players' injury history. So you will have instances where players are coming back from injury, and because they have not yet, since they have been passed medically fit to resume cricket, but they have to be given a certain amount of time to get, I guess, basic fitness levels up to a point. But they have still been selected because the feeling was that they could still contribute, and that the injury that they had shouldn't have been held against them. So there have been times when the injury history will come in. It is one of the areas that one of these 4 areas that exemptions are granted. And we went through the others: training history, physiological limitations, and also age.
So tell me this though, and again, it is just to inform the debate that takes place around the announcements of squads. If it is that a player takes a fitness test, Jimmy, and based on the variables that you just, not even variables, the areas on the matrix that they have to tick, and you've ticked those at a particular point, you pass a fitness test. But down the road, maybe it is that the injury that you suffered has healed to the extent that you are not inhibited by that injury anymore. Does your minimum standard then shift? Because those doing the test would say, well, in terms of fitness, you are now 3 months after your surgery, and with normal healing and everything, as you say, you're not feeling any discomfort. So this minimum standard that you hit here is no longer applicable. You're going to have to hit a higher point in order to come into the realm of being fit as per the test. Is that what happens?
what usually happens is that the medical people will clear them, and then they will declare, they'll give a time frame in which they will say, okay, you are now cleared medically, and it might be 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and based on that, they will be asked to do fitness testing at the end of that period, and then all the normal I guess regulations would kick in terms of what the minimum standard is, which would be the same for everybody. Potentially, it would be first to get them past the minimum standard, but then if they have been given a personal target, they don't expect it to meet that as well. But in terms of selection, the minimum standard is there. So once they get cleared to do a fitness test, then they would come under that ruling per se, and selection then would depend on them hitting that minimum standard.
Final question for you, Jimmy. In terms of how in terms of the reconciliation between a player's form and a player's fitness, this is another argument that often attends to the selection of squads and the omission of players for failing fitness tests. Someone will say, how can Hetty hit such a brilliant century in the knockout stage of the Super 50 and then a few days later fail a fitness test? It doesn't make sense. If he's fit enough to make a century, he's fit enough to play for the West Indies. Address that for us.
Well, I'm not sure that timeline is correct. From what I know, the fitness test was failed before he scored those runs. So the selectors sit and basically they have a list of players, and the first thing that they're going to do is look at where they are currently in terms of their fitness, and they look at the last fitness test that they did. Hetty failed the last fitness test before the selection of that team.
And what you're saying as well is that if based on the signs that guides a fitness test, if you are coming up to a test and you come up to that test on the eve of stroking 100 in a competitive game, that will that have any bearing on the parameters of the test?
Sorry, you kind of lost me a little bit there. Repeat that question.
What I'm saying, Jimmy, all right, let me see if I can go another way. If it is that, today's Tuesday, if it is that you're due for a fitness test on Friday, on Wednesday afternoon, you hit a century in a competitive game. I'm asking if, based on the scientific design of the fitness test and otherwise, if there's any provision made for, well, you know, this man stroked a century on Wednesday, so even though these numbers aren't meeting the minimum standards, we're going to give him a pass just the same, because the fact of him scoring a century 48 hours before this fitness test suggests that he's fit to play cricket at this level.
Okay, so just making clear, first of all, before I answer that it was the other way around with regards to Hetmeyer.
No, man, I'm not talking about Hetmeyer specifically. You addressed that already. I'm comfortable with that. I was just asking you something else, Yeah. For me, the fitness standard stands. It applies to everybody across the board. And there is the only exemptions are the four that I named before. There are no other exemptions. Got you on that. All right, we're clear. Thank you very much for your time, Jimmy Adams. All the best to you.
Anytime, no problem.
Good. Director of Cricket at Cricket West Indies, Jimmy Adams. So, Lance, here's the thing now. So, Jimmy has said that, and it's important to ask the questions. It may, I don't want anybody to say, well, it's pedantic. It isn't, because this is what people are talking about on our message forums in their interactions with us. A man will say, so how can, and he was I'm very happy that he cleared up the fact that Hetty's failed fitness test came before that century against Windies, it was, right? Windies Volcanoes. So if it is that you stroke 200 today and go do the fitness test tomorrow, the fact that you scored 200 runs in a competitive game has no bearing on the fitness test whatsoever, and it won't give you an extra point or mark to get you up into the zone where you qualify for selection.
Unless you're among the exempted players.
But the point I'm making is that is not an exemption. Scoring big runs is not a part of the scientific or medical exemption that you can get. So I don't want anybody to say, well, how come that man scored runs then, only to fail a fitness test later? It's foolishness. Jimmy Adams is saying that's not how it works.
Yeah, we have a lot more coming on the SportsMax Zone. After the break, we have some football, another standoff between the Jamaica Football Federation and the players, and Manchester City, the EPL leaders, were in action. NBA to come as well. And don't forget that big fourth test between India and England. That will be live on SportsMax Wednesday night. Back after this.